Hey guys, so what I want to talk today about is buying a BMW M3. And this particular one is going to pertain mostly to the E90, 92, and 93, although some of it will kind of go across generations, but just know that is going to be the primary focus. So don't get mad if I say something that's not quite true for one of the other generations. Now, if I say something that's not true for the current generation, then by all means, let me know about it. Alright, so the first thing, and this one actually does go through the past generations, and I think even for BMWs going forward, is the rod bearings. So the E92 generation, as we will call it, because that's kind of what I'm looking at, the bearings aren't quite as bad as they were on the E46, but they still, did have some issues. Now, it's not necessarily them being bad, it's more based on the clearances that go with it within the bearings and the lubrication. So a lot of the times, and this is partly due to none of the M3s up to that point, as far as I know, having a dry sump system, is that in heavy cornering and lots of load, the oil kind of sloshes around in the oil pan, so away from the ends of the rods, and it can cause some issues. It's not on this generation, it's not quite as big of a deal, but still something that does need to be addressed. I don't know if this part is true, but it seems like from people just that have had BMW M3s and just from online, is that for the 2010 and on, those ones were a little bit better, so they didn't quite have the issues, but definitely still something you should want to address. And if they haven't been, that's still fine, but I would ask, and I am asking, if there's ever been an oil analysis done. Blackstone, I know, is like the real popular one. I don't know what other ones are out there. That's the one that comes up most with the BMW folks, as well as then the Corvette people, because my C6 Z06 has its own issues of dropping valves, so people get oil analysis for that as well too. Second thing is the throttle actuators. These ones aren't incredibly expensive, and it's not something where it's going to be a catastrophic failure like it would be on the rod bearings. Just kind of going back to that one, I was pricing it out, and from BMW to replace a motor of one of those, it's like 30 grand. I did see from some private shops locally, and this may be different, depending on where you're at, but here where I am, the sort of cheapest shop that I would trust was about 17 grand, so it's not cheap. So yeah, rod bearings. Anyways, back to throttle actuators. Typically, what it seems like to be the case is that the second one will actually go bad first. And from what I can tell, this is not something that's going to be catastrophic, but it is something that's going to be kind of annoying that you are going to eventually have to get fixed. So it's good if they have been addressed beforehand. Third, and this is one that I was actually not aware of until I started to look into the BMW forums, the BMW community, so shout out to them, but the AC evaporator can fail. The part itself isn't very expensive from what I can tell, or as far as BMW OEM parts go. But what gets expensive is the labor, and according to a lot of people on the BMW forums, they'll sometimes charge you for a full day or even two for labor, depending on how long it's there. So it's definitely something that you could probably want to get checked beforehand. One of the easy ways from what I see is just seeing if the freon levels are low or if it's not quite blowing quite as cold as you think it should be. So, fourth thing is motor mounts. BMW M3 motor mounts, I think it goes for most of the M models, their motor mounts tend to wear very quickly. And we're not just talking about like once in sort of like the lifetime of the car, but we're talking like, 30, 40,000 miles, they need to be changed. It's definitely, you can definitely feel that, so something that's fairly easy to, figure out once you just, test drive a car. But that's, again, something, it's not, the part itself isn't very expensive, but the labor on it is pretty intensive. Kind of the piggyback off of that one a little bit is the transmission mounts. It's not quite as big of a deal, but for some people who are looking at higher mileage cars, like for me, I'm looking for stuff that's in kind of like the 80,000 to like 110,000 miles. So around the 100,000 mile mark is when you kind of want to start thinking about the transmission mounts. So overall though, they're not a huge issue, but that's just something if you are getting into the higher mileage cars, like like I am on this, that you want to take a look at. Just for me it's going to be a driver, kind of every day, low speeds, not necessarily going fast all the time, but high mileage for me, it works. Fifth thing, if it has the DCT in it, ask them if or have they ever changed the fluid on it. It's not detrimental or it's not something catastrophic, as I guess as I like to say, if they haven't, but it's definitely something you are going to want to have to do eventually. And the other thing to ask them is if it appears to weep. Apparently a little bit of it's normal. I don't like things leaking on my garage floor, even if it is, minuscule. It only happens if it sits for a long time, but apparently that part is normal, but you still want to, get that stuff taken care of. So the next one, number 6, is if you have the 6-speed, is ask them when they last changed the clutch, if they ever have. Obviously the lower mileages, probably they have not, but from checking with the local shops, the local BMW dealership, and just online, you're looking at anywhere between $2,800 to $3,700 to change that if you aren't doing it yourself. Me personally, I'd rather just pay someone. I've got a lot of other stuff going on, so it can't always be wrenching on a car, especially for something like that where it's not particularly any fun. So ask them when they've done that, because that can just save you a lot of money, or just you have to plan that in the future. Again, this is something kind of unrelated, but just it's fairly easy to tell if the clutch is going, just by driving the car. And the seller too will probably let you know as well if if the clutch has been changed anytime in the recent history. So the next one is that I'm going to go for things that I look for is, so number 7 is I would really prefer to have the 09 or newer. For me, because the 09 had the better iDrive on it, or just the updated iDrive. There are some things, like the 2010, I think, was like the BMW apps, and there's a few other, things newer, the competition package is also nicer on some of the new ones, but for me, the only thing that I would ever conceivably use on a fairly regular basis is the iDrive, because it's, kind of right here, and so you are using it quite frequently. So if possible, look for an 09 or newer, because that one was updated, and from what I understand, it is significantly better. Alright, and that's really it for me as far as things that I would want to look at before buying an M3, and the kind of things I am looking at before I buy my M3, and the things my friend in the previous videos who's learning how to drive looked at when he was looking for an M3. So again, these are performance cars, so either they're not going to be like a Civic as far as being just flat out just reliable no matter what. So there's always going to be a little bit of risk just built into these, having a car like this. But in the end, just get out and enjoy them. They're great. They're fun. I am envious every time I'm in my friends, so I will be getting one soon. So other than that, that's all I had. So I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.